let's talk a little bit about thinking about rest because we're in this like culture or we're in this cultural moment where women are feeling all this pressure to be everything. What got modeled for us in our households growing up was mom did everything.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, there's also this incredible grind and hustle culture at work, and hybrid work has made it worse. And the fact, I have never experienced in the 10 years that I've been coaching people the amount of burnout, the amount of people who can never catch a break from work or family or chores or this, the pace that kids are being pushed on travel teams, and like everybody's just running this race to nowhere. And we've forgotten how important rest is. And so, how should we think about rest so that we don't feel guilty?
We should think of rest as a right and not a reward.
Oh. Can you unpack that for us?
Sure.
A right, not a reward.
We often get the message from childhood that rest and recreation is a reward for productivity. Right? You do well, you get something extra. So you have to do your chores, then you can go play. Do your homework, then you can go play video games. If you don't work hard in class, can't go to recess. There's all these, and there's nothing wrong with that necessarily. Like, people want to teach children responsibility and priorities and all of that. But sometimes the unintended message is, I can't go do the fun thing. I can't go do the rest thing until the productive thing is done. And that's fine when you're a kid and your list of things that must be done is finite. Right? If you're
Unpack
12,
your backpack.
Yeah, unpack your backpack, take out the trash and do the dishes, and great, then go run off and do whatever. And then you become a 35-year-old woman and you're like, wait, but the things that have to be done is like unpack the backpacks, then do the dishes, then take the trash out, then feed the cats, then vacuum the floors, then scrub the baseboards, and then call the doctor, and it's like we think we have to get the whole list done before we can rest and relax. And so we never relax. And when we finally burn out, or we get overwhelmed and we collapse and we're frozen and we think to ourselves, I'm resting now, but you're not, because people who rest in shame work in shame. People who work in shame rest in shame. When you think that all of those tasks are moral obligations and you're not going to be good enough if you can't stay on top of it, then if you do go and sit down, all you're thinking about are the things you should be doing. And you don't actually rest. And so you get up, now you're behind and you're tired and you think, I can't do this. And then for a lot of people, they get so overwhelmed and burnt out that they kind of go frozen and can't do anything. And then they go, well, I must be lazy. I must try harder. I got to do more. When it's like, whoa, maybe you need to do less.
How do you put that into action? Because as you were talking, I'm like, that's me. Because I don't know anybody, at least no women, that are able to truly take a break, rest, and not feel guilty about it.
Yeah. So I think that there's been a lot of talk about taking breaks and how important that is. And I want to go in a slightly different direction. One, because a lot of people can't. Like they physically can't.
Yeah.
Things will fall apart. Things will not be functional if they, right? And I think that if you are someone privileged enough to have the time, money, energy to be able to take breaks, then you've heard that advice. You can just go do that, right?
Right.
So instead of thinking about, well, how am I going to get a break? How am I going to get a break? How am I going to get a break? And yes, we need breaks. However, let's think instead about how we can get rest by just making things easier for ourselves. So the example that I use a lot is, let's say you have a mom and she's overwhelmed. Maybe she's a single mom, she's overwhelmed. And so the traditional sense of a break would be like, well, can you get someone to babysit the kids so that you can take a few hours a week?
Right.
Great. That's fine. That's nice. But
what
if
you
they
know
can't
what?
do that?
That doesn't happen, because then you think it's going to take me time to find somebody, and then I'm going to have to coordinate it, and then I'm going to owe them the 2 hours. And so that's a wonderful thing for researchers to recommend. But in a normal person's life, it doesn't fucking happen.
Yeah. So instead, let's go, how can we make something easier? So what if Friday nights at this woman's house are rest nights. And instead of cooking, she orders a pizza. Or instead of cooking, she makes a giant grazing plate for her kids. And she puts it out and goes, eat what you want. Or if they're older, what if she goes, it's make your own dinner night, and I don't care what you make. Get the ice cream out of the freezer. I don't care, right? So you find a way to give yourself a big break on how you're feeding. And then you say Friday nights are also movie nights. And that means we all make a pallet in the floor, we turn on the TV, and I don't care what time you go to bed. And in those few hours, maybe she doesn't get to go anywhere. Maybe she can step away and do a fun project, but at the least she gets to sit there and do nothing, and things are just easier. There are no dishes to clean up. She uses paper plates. She doesn't have to do the bedtime rigmarole of I don't want to sleep and read me another story. No, we're just going to sit here and watch TV, or that's the night we all sleep in mom's bed, or that's the night, right? Like, let's find a way to make Fridays or Sunday afternoons or Saturday mornings easier for a period of time where you just kind of go hands off, needs are met, your kids are going to think it's fun, you're going to give yourself a break.
Amazing.
I think that's why. That's how.
My shoulders just dropped. It's now going to be movie night and fend for yourself on Friday nights. You have a saying about paper plates that I would love for you. You have this like mantra about paper plates.
Yeah.
Hit it.
Yeah. So my mantra about paper plates is you can't save the rainforest if you're depressed. And this came about because I was making a video trying to help somebody in a deep depression about how do they do their dishes. And I brought out, like, everyone's going to have that Tupperware molding in the back of the refrigerator, and that's what's keeping you from doing anything around your kitchen. And what I want to say to you is just throw the Tupperware away. Just throw it away. You can't save the rainforest if you're depressed. Better that we take some shortcuts now to get you back to being a functional human being where you can actually have the energy and the capacity to contribute to environmental causes in a way that matters, right? We know that there's a way to contribute that makes a big impact, and that is, through your politics, through perhaps your donations, perhaps your volunteering, but we're not going to save the earth just by convincing depressed people to hang on to their moldy Tupperware and their cardboard boxes.
You're fucking awesome. I wish you lived next door to me.
And by the way, I've never seen an environmentalist shame a diabetic for using single-use plastic syringes. And yet I have seen so many people in the name of environmentalism shame a new mother or a person in grief or a person with really bad ADHD or autism for using a single-use toothbrush or a paper plate.
You have a concept called fair rest. Mm-hmm. And for those of you that are living with family or a roommate and you feel like you're the one that does everything, what is the concept of fair rest, and how can you use it so that the kind of division of labor, so to speak, which almost never really works in people's households and in the apartments that you share with roommates, how do you use this concept of fair rest?
So this is a different way of looking at division of labor, because the traditional way of looking at it is equal labor. So the work should be equal. But when you talk about the work should be equal, let's just say we're talking about a marriage, what that sets you up for is comparison, competition, and like every man for himself, because then it's me having to prove the labor that I'm doing and how worthy it is. And then my husband has to prove how valuable his labor is and who's doing more. And unless you have the exact same job, and even then, it's like, who's going to compare a corporate attorney to an author or a stay-at-home mom? Like, you can't, a coal miner to a teacher, to a psychotherapist, to a doctor, like you can't, there's all sorts of different ways why people's jobs are difficult or any of those things. So it makes I have to look out for me. I have to prove the value of my labor and then fight for, only getting what's going to be fair. No. Back it up. It doesn't actually matter whether the work is equal. It matters whether the rest is fair. And to make the rest fair, it might be that one person's going to be working more or harder than the other in different seasons. So an example of this might be, let's say that an easy example, let's take that corporate attorney and that stay-at-home mom. And they're going, and he's going, I work so many hours, and she's going, I work nonstop too. And we look at how can we work together to make sure each of us is getting fair rest. And you can look and go, okay, well, what if that corporate attorney, even though he works all the time, he's still off the clock sometimes. And he still gets that lunch break. He still has what we call time autonomy to decide what and when to do things. And you have this stay-at-home parent who, has a more flexible schedule. Maybe she does get to have that rest in the middle of the day or something, but she's also doing care tasks which are cyclical in nature. They never stop. She's always on call. Right. And so it might be that they need to have a conversation about, on Saturdays, you be the default parent.
Right.
You be the one that changes the diapers and makes the dinners and, listens for the fights and does those things. And on Sundays, I'll be the default parent. And on when you're not the default parent, you get to just exist in your home. You get to go read a book. You get to do this. You get to do that. Now, that's not a prescription. That's not going to work for everybody. But if you have a dentist and a teacher, let's talk about fair rest. Let's talk about both of us deserve at certain point at night to clock out. We both deserve a functional house, but everyone deserves to clock out of home labor and out of house labor. It shouldn't be the case that one person spends most of their time facilitating the life of the other.
Whoa. And what I liked best about what you said, because you once again flipped the paradigm, is that for most of us that are struggling with division of labor in our relationships and households, we're in a deadlock and a fight about the importance of the work that you're doing, justifying that you need time off. And, interestingly, when I started, my career, this part of my career and my speaking business really took off, it was at a moment in time where Chris had left the restaurant business. And he was what we started calling the first call parent, which meant he was the first person on the list at school that got called when there was something going on. And he was a stay-at-home dad. And what I noticed was very interesting. And that is that as I took on the role of primary and solo breadwinner, I also took on the gender kind of stereotype of feeling like my work was more important.
Mm-hmm.
And here I had been the first call parent for over a decade. And yet now that I'm making the money and I'm doing all the things and I'm out and I'm traveling and I'm working and I'm bringing home the baby and I'm doing all this stuff, I, as a woman, valued my contribution as much more than what my husband was doing by taking care of the kids. And we would have all of these battles about, I need time, but you've been out and I haven't had a break. But we were in the non-stereotypical gender roles in our marriage. And I found it extremely enlightening how work out of the house or the type of work that you do makes you think you deserve more.
Yeah.
And by making the conversation about rest, because we all believe that and can see that we deserve rest. And in talking about the fact that when you're the first call parents, you're in a never-ending cycle. There is no lunch break. There is no time off while somebody's taking a nap because you're probably trying to fold laundry. You need rest. And so by talking about it in this way, it actually brings compassion instead of competition into it. I love that. I love that. I love that.
And I was thinking about this the other day, there's been a lot of talk on my TikTok channel about division of labor, and especially this idea of, well, if I bring home the bills, that they should be taking care of everything else. And I think, and then you have, well, this is actually being at home's harder. Well, actually, and then we get in the competition. But
Yeah.
Think of it this way. There's a big difference between a couple saying, hey, this is how much I work, and here are the things that need to get done. And if you were to do XYZ, then how can we divide these so that you and I have the maximum amount of free time? It's not about what do I deserve, I shouldn't have to take out the trash because I did XYZ. It's if I take out the trash right now while he's doing bedtime, then we'll both get to hang out afterwards.
It's not a tit for tat.
It's not. It's okay, we decided that, I'm going to stay home and you're going to do this. And because of the amount you work, I'll do most of this stuff. Not because, oh, I have to pull my weight or you don't have to do this, but because it just makes the most sense because then we can both have time. But the other half of that is having an explicit conversation about what is sort of the minimum standard of functionality, because everybody deserves to function, and letting go of perfectionism. Like, one of the reasons why I think we miss this conversation is that it's not just about who's taking out the trash. It's also about when one of you comes home and the trash isn't taken out, how do we respond to that? Do we go right to accusatory? Do we go right to, you should have done it? Do we go right to, or do we go to grace? Do we go, wow, I wonder if they had a hard day today?
I am guilty of all of this. Chris and I have had all of these issues in our marriage. The one thing that's very triggering for Chris is when I stack the cardboard boxes by the garage door and I don't flatten them. And when he sees the tower of cardboard boxes, he says, look, I feel like you think I'm the maid here. And so we've had that conversation. I got a lot out of this concept of fair rest and maximizing the amount of free time. And I'm going to bring that into my conversations with Chris because we haven't talked about it that way. What flipped it for me, Casey, is that I started to see how gross it was that I was adopting this very masculine, traditional value work hire. Even though I'm didn't feel that way at all, it's almost as if society itself had me absorb those messages because it's so insidious the way it can impact you. I started to realize I can't do what I do and have the family life that I want without him here full time.
Oh, yeah.
There's not another person I can pay. Even that, well, what would I pay somebody to clean the house? It's not the same because that's their dad. And so it's priceless. And so when I finally absorbed that and I believed it and felt it, we became equal in terms of the contribution, but I've never had the conversation about what rest you need. How do we maximize our time together? How can we be in better partnership? And I think that's a game changer. Complete game changer.
It's especially a game changer when you have that first call parent because unless the person who's not that default parent, they have to be proactive about inserting themselves into situations in order for that first call parent to rest, even if they're still at the house, right? Because you'll often have a dynamic where, okay, partner A is the default most of the time. And so when someone cries, do I wait to see if they're going to do it? And if they don't, okay, I'll do it. If they're busy, I'll do it. I help, I do. Okay, but it's not just if they're busy, you do it. It's sometimes you have to get up and do it so they don't have to. They don't have to be busy. That's not the only justification for being able to just sit on your couch for more than 5 minutes at a time.
It's a right to rest.
Yes.
Not a reward. I remember when I was struggling profoundly with postpartum, and I know you had a very significant struggle too. I was so sick and so weak and so depressed that I was in bed severely medicated for 12 weeks. And it was a really awful moment in my life. And, it was severe enough that they didn't want me to be alone with the baby, with Sawyer. And I remember during that time that our cousins, Lisa and Steve, paid to have their cleaning person come to our house once a week. And it was one of the greatest gifts somebody could have ever given me. And I also had my parents who could stay, but just for, they stayed for a couple weeks. And then Chris's parents came. And then I had a very dear friend, Joni, sit with me while Chris could go off to work because I couldn't take a shower. I couldn't brush my teeth. I couldn't get out of bed, and I needed to be recovering. And I'll never forget that. And I wondered what thoughts you had about what the person listening can do to help someone that they love through a really tough time, like postpartum or depression or the loss of a loved one, or just those moments where something happens or you find yourself in a stretch of the highway called life where laundry's overwhelming. Brushing your teeth is like scaling Mount Everest. What can someone do to help?
So, taking into consideration that, you have to kind of look at who that person is to you, right? The way you would show up at someone's front door of your best friend, maybe wouldn't want to show up at the front door of someone who, you work with. But that being said, one of the things that I have found that almost works for everyone, and I know that sounds like I'm just like the paper plate queen, but like if you take someone in a hard time, a giant stack of paper plates, like all the paper stuff, it's magical because here's what happens. It's already there. They may not ever go out to do that because, they care about the environment, because they don't think it's that bad. But if you already put it there, they're not making any environmental impact by just using it.
That's true.
That's my favorite gift, because I don't need to know their dietary restrictions. I don't need to go into their house if they're not comfortable with that. I don't need, everyone can get a break from doing dishes. And you take all the guilt away by just being like, I'm leaving it on your front porch.
Oh, I love that. Casey Davis, you are a treasure. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Mel, I have some bad news. Your entire 2022 was just booked solid with keynotes from all of the people that visited your website in the last 12 minutes, because what you just said was absolutely accurate. And every leader just needs to be reminded, right? We're all under pressure. We're all trying to survive. We all have issues going on in our life. We're trying to pivot and we're trying to disrupt ourselves and stay alive. And you're absolutely right. These are not hard things to do. These are mandates of anyone who is a leader of people to show appreciation.
Here's one thing that you can do. Steal this idea. So every morning as part of your morning routine, there are two things that will move the needle when it comes to appreciation. Actually, I'm going to tell you three things based on the research. Number one, research from Harvard Business School has shown that simply taking a moment, less than a minute every morning, and I suggest you do it in front of the bathroom mirror and you pair it with this high five habit of high-fiving yourself in the mirror. But every single morning after you brush your teeth, I want you to take less than a minute and I want you to set an intention for how you're going to show up today. Let's just focus on work, because you can do this with family too, but let's focus on work. How are you going to show up today as a leader at work? And, forget about title. If your behavior or your example or your presence changes people, you're a leader in my book. And so how are you going to show up today at work? And what are you going to do to impact people? And if you just take less than a minute and reflect on that, and it could literally for the year of 2022 just be, I am going to make sure that people know how much I appreciate them. I'm going to bring an optimistic attitude, which means I'm going to focus on what's going right. And I'm going to remind everybody through our efforts and our attitude, we can actually make a positive impact on whatever challenge or issue we're facing. Pick something that is going to be your intention for how you're going to show up. Research shows simply doing that changes how you show up at work, and it improves your ability to positively impact other people. So that's rule number one that you're going to do. Rule number two, after you then seal it with a high five in the mirror, is I want you to take one moment, and I would do it first thing in the morning. And I want you to send a thank you note to somebody, okay? And here's how you're going to do it. You are going to write to one person a day and try to make it somebody you work with. And then you can expand it out to other people. But if you want to move the needle at work, think of one person, okay? And all you're going to do is thank them. And you're going to tell them what they did. Hey, thank you so much for checking in on me. last week. You're going to tell them why that mattered to you. It really made me feel like I belong here. And it's been difficult because it's difficult to start a job working remote. And then you're just going to end it by saying, thank you. I just wanted to tell you, that's it. If you want to supersize it, you could write it on a note, take a photograph, email them the photograph. You could leave them a voice memo. You could leave them a quick video. You can send the email. You could write the letter. Research shows that when you make it a habit to send these notes of thank you, appreciation, what you did, why it mattered to me, and what you think of them, thank you very much, that it not only floods the other person with dopamine, it deepens your connection, it deepens your trust, but you also get the benefit of the flood of dopamine and the enhanced sense of trust and belonging. So that's number 2, what you could do. Number 3, what you could do is borrow the research from Project Aristotle, which is a 3-year study that I'm sure many of you know about that was done at Google, where they researched teams across Google and they wanted to know what makes for the most engaged and the most innovative teams at Google. And what they found after crunching the data for 3 years is it comes down to emotional safety. What does that mean? Emotional safety means that people feel appreciated and people feel like they belong. So much so that they feel safe coming to you with their issues. So how do you create emotional safety, particularly where everybody's all fried? Very simple. Whenever you are conducting a meeting, allow people to have their cameras off, of course. But number 2, if the size permits, I want you to take on this practice. What you'll notice in meetings is that all the extroverts like me go first. We start popping off and sharing and talking and blah, 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 right? And then there's a whole group of people that either are introverted or shy or new or whatever, and they are not speaking. Your job as the leader is once the extroverts go, you are to call on the folks that aren't talking. And here's how you do it so that you don't put somebody on the spot and you don't create anxiety in them. Instead of asking for an opinion, you simply go, hey, Scott, what do you think about what you've heard so far? Ask for a reaction. Because what you're doing is you're demonstrating to the team that you care about what Scott thinks, whether he's speaking or not, and that you value his participation. And then, of course, when he says something, you compliment, a piece of whatever he just said or she just said or they just said. And what happens is the team is watching. So what they've found is that when you do this, you make sure everybody talks before you end the meeting by asking for people's weigh-in or reactions. The team starts to model it. And when you feel like people care about what you think, when you feel regarded and valued, research also shows that appreciation, that sense of belonging and value improves your productivity and performance, because feeling seen, heard, and appreciated is the truest form of motivation. That's how you cultivate it at work as a leader.
Mel, in your life, did you ever have a chance to meet Dr. Stephen R. Covey?
No.
He would have been riveted listening to you the last couple of minutes. I want to read a passage from your most recent book, The High Five Habit. In essence, you described what the big idea is, but I want to read a passage. It says, it starts with you. If you want more celebration, validation, love, acceptance, and optimism, you must practice giving those things to yourself. For real, it starts with you. If you don't cheer for yourself and your dreams, who else will? If you can't look yourself in the mirror and see someone worth loving, why would anyone else? And speaking of anyone else, when you learn to love yourself and support yourself, it helps every relationship in your life. When you can celebrate yourself, it helps you cheer louder for others, your friends, your colleagues, your family, your neighbors, and your partner. That's because the relationship with yourself is the foundation of every relationship you have in life. Riff on that.
Yeah, this was a huge epiphany for me. And, I'm going to go out on a limb here and assume that since you're listening to this or watching this, you, like me, are a high achiever. You have very high standards for yourself. You're looking to improve your life. Well, I want to flag a very big mistake that took me 52 years to uncover and to change in my own life. And it is the single biggest and most profound change that I have ever discovered. And it is this. At a very young age, I started to realize, and I think, we all have this epiphany where we go, oh, holy cow. When I get good grades, my parents like me and they love me. I get a lot of positive attention when I make the football team. I'm really feeling loved when I make the cheerleading squad. Ooh, when I got into that college or had that major or made that money or bought that nice car, people really gave me a lot of positive attention. And we high achievers make a mistake of fusing what we're doing with our worthiness. We start to believe that we are only worthy of celebration, support, and love when we are doing something that is worth celebrating or worth validating or worth cheering for. And if you don't wake up and separate the things that you're doing and striving for and the goals that you have from your inherent self-worth as a human being, you will forever feel this sense that you're not enough. You will forever feel this void, because if your self-worth and your lovability is anchored in achievement, even when you make $1 million, even when you make the New York Times bestseller list, even when you meet the person of your dreams, the second you achieve that thing, you're going to now look for something else, because your worth as a human being depends on what you're doing. The high five habit is all about this radical idea that will change your life. And the idea is this: if you are breathing, you're worthy of celebration. The mere fact that you exist is why you are worthy of being loved and supported and forgiven. And it's why you deserve kindness. It's not because you made it to the gym. It's not because you're making $100,000. It's not because you just got promoted. Should you celebrate those wins? Of course. But those wins are not the reason why you're an extraordinary human being. And, I had this all knotted up. And, I wondered, why did I, every time I achieved my goals, I would still see a woman in the mirror that wasn't enough. I was my own worst critic. And by critic, this is what I mean. I was relentless in focusing on what wasn't working. I was relentless in pointing out to myself all the things I did wrong instead of the 1,000 things I was doing right. Yeah. And that constant grinding beatdown was so just much the default, I wasn't even aware of it until I discovered the power of high-fiving myself in the mirror and silencing that critic. And, I'll tell you an even more personal thing that I bet a bunch of you are going to really relate to. So when I discovered the high five habit, and it was just by dumb luck, I was going through a lot in my life. It was April of 2020. There was a lot going on in my business. This was before the PPP loans had come out. The speaking business was in a free fall. My television show had been canceled. Our kids had come home, and they were just exploding with anxiety and grief and anger about college getting canceled. Like, it was just like a mess. And I would wake up in the morning and I just felt overwhelmed by my life. And it doesn't even matter what's going on in the backdrop, because I think we've all had that experience where you just feel overwhelmed by your to-do list. You feel overwhelmed by how busy your life is. You feel overwhelmed by the issues that you're facing. Even though there's other amazing things going on, it's like the overwhelm that drags you down. And so I'm standing in the bathroom and I look at myself in the mirror and I immediately begin with the beat down. I'm like, oh, God, you look terrible. And the lines on my neck and one boob's hanging lower than the other. And, the circles under my eyes. And then, of course, once your mindset goes critical, it rests there. So it went from attacking my physical appearance to, why'd I wake up so late? God, I got 8 minutes to get on a Zoom call. You forgot to text Scott back. Oh, come on, Mel. Like boom, 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 boom. No grace, no kindness, no compassion. That's how I started my day. And in this moment, on a random morning on April 2020, all of a sudden, this is divine intervention. There is no question. I stop for a second and I realize, holy cow, that woman in the mirror looks beaten down and overwhelmed. And for whatever reason, I just raised my hand and I gave her a high five in the mirror. And, look, it's not like lightning struck in that moment. But what happened is my shoulders dropped. I laughed because it seemed so stupid. But I felt this like energy shift. It was sort of like a shift like, all right, okay, sort of like if a teammate blows a free throw in basketball. When you high five them, it's like, shake it off. Come on, we're going to still win. Get out there. I believe in you. Let's go. It's that kind of energy. And so I felt that. And I kind of had this like, come on, you got a roof over your, you're going to be fine. You're going to figure it out. I know it's a lot, but you're going to figure it out, Mom. And boom, I went on with my day. And the next day I did it again. And the next day I did it again. And the next day I did it again. And I started to realize I was feeling something. First of all, the critic was shutting up because here's where the science gets crazy cool. And this isn't just Mel Robbins science. The woman who discovered neuroplasticity 30 years ago, that neuroscientist went bananas. Her head basically exploded when I started discussing the high five habit. Here's what we know happens when you add a simple high five to your morning routine. Number one, you get a drip of dopamine. And dopamine is critical. The reason why dopamine is critical is because it boosts your mood. When you simply high five yourself, your brain recognizes the high five because the programming's already in here. Your brain knows what to do when the high five is coming. Boop, dopamine. Dopamine's important because it boosts your mood. We know that your mood in the morning impacts productivity all day long. Second thing that it does, as you go to raise your hand, the first time you do it, you're going to be thinking, Mel, Scott, you two have lost me on this. This is so stupid. Like your critic is going to be going because this part of your brain is going to be engaged. The second you get close to mirror, something crazy happens. Your mind goes silent. Your mind goes silent because your brain is now triggered by the action. This is called neurobics, an entire field of study about neuropathway activity in physical motion. Your brain goes quiet because your brain recognizes a high five. And so it grabs all the neuroassociation and programming in your subconscious and it marries it with your reflection. A high five has always said, I believe in you. I see you. I love you. You got this. It is celebration. It is belief. It is confidence. It is optimism. It is resilience. It's motivation. A high five, never in the history of high fives has a high five been, have a terrible day. You are the worst. You're going to fail. That's not what a high five means. That's why your critic shuts up because the high five programming that's already in your brain overrides it. It's incredible. That's the third thing that happens. As you repeat this new action your brain is watching, this isn't a mantra, which doesn't work, by the way. This is a physical habit your brain is witnessing you do. So your brain starts to see you treating yourself with kindness, compassion, forgiveness, acceptance, support. Your brain's filter, the reticular activity system, is paying attention. It's changing in real time. Do you realize that after adding a simple high five to my morning routine, it took about 5 days for this to happen, by the way, but I've now done it since April of 2020. Every single morning after I brush my teeth, I stack the habit together. It's now programmed as a habit loop in there. Don't even think about it. The benefits are incredible. When I see myself in the mirror, it wouldn't occur to me to think something negative. because I have fundamentally rewired my mind. I see a human being that I'm rooting for. I see the person I high five every morning. It's freaking unbelievable. And the way that it's changed me as a leader, I don't look at what's wrong. I focus on what's working. And when something screws up, like this morning, I put up a big post this morning about depression, because my husband is now publicly talking about the long-term depression that he's been struggling with. And we edited the post really intently because it's a serious topic and I have millions of followers and I would never just send somebody casually out on a stage to talk on my behalf. So everything I post, I get last eyes on. And the post that we edited isn't the one that got posted. And the old Mel Robbins, the negative, critical, like kind of something's wrong, stressed out, that Mel Robbins, the pre-high five habit Mel Robbins, my default would have been, oh, everything, like this kind of reaction to it. The new Mel Robbins was like, oh, okay. I wonder if it was a tech glitch. Well, let's fix it. Like, it's unbelievable to have a default that you have intentionally programmed in that's optimistic, encouraging, supportive. It's life-changing. You'll make a lot more money too, because you're not gripping everything so tight. And I want to tell you one more insight, because this is super important. You know, when I first said to my husband, who's also an entrepreneur, I think you should try this high five habit thing. I really think you should add it to your morning routine. And now keep in mind, my husband is the founder of a men's retreat called Soul Degree. He is all about men going in and unbottling the stuff that keeps you feeling like there's a vice on your head or your chest. He is a Buddhist meditation instructor. He's a yoga instructor. He is on the board of advisors of NOLS, the National Outdoor Leadership Institute. He's an incredible guy. And he's been struggling with depression for 10 years. And he has also, unbeknownst to me, been beating the heck out of himself because he failed in his first business as an entrepreneur in the restaurant business. And I know so many of you are going to relate to this story, so I want to tell it to you. You see, Chris and his best friends went into the restaurant business. And, you know, the stats on the restaurant business are bananas. I think it's like, 4% of restaurants make it beyond 4 years or something like that. And so they made it beyond 4 years. They ended up making it 7 years before they sold it to the folks that own it now. But, you know, their first location was amazing. And we were complete idiots. We cashed out our life savings, our kids' college funds. We threw it all into the business. We leveraged the business with our house and credit cards and factoring. And, you know, what could go wrong? Well, then the housing crisis hit. And we found ourselves $800,000 in debt. Chris hadn't been paid for 6 months. I lost my job. And it was crushing. That was the first hole that I fell in when I hit rock bottom, and I invented the 5-second rule in that moment to help me get out of bed when the anxiety was so bad that I literally would lay there like a human pot roast marinating in fear over all of our problems. And what's interesting is that as Chris and I have clawed our way out of debt, as we have rewritten our lives and launched new chapters, I've always looked at that period and that business failing as a gift. I've always, and Chris's business partner too, was like, kind of could shrug his shoulders and be like, hey, entrepreneurship, failure is part of the package here. Doesn't mean you're a failure. And actually his business partner's like, I'm really proud of what we built. I'm proud of how we were operators. I'm proud of the culture we built. And yeah, like, it didn't return the investment that we thought it would. And I'm also grateful for it, Scott, because without it, I never would have been in such a crisis that I needed the 5-second rule. So it's like a gift. It wasn't until I asked Chris to add this high five to the mirror, and his reaction was this: I think I'll pass. That sounds stupid. And I'm like, excuse me? Okay, but I'm on to something here. Would you just do it for me? Because I need your support. Would you just try it for 5 days, for crying out loud? And so Chris tried the high five in the mirror. You don't say anything. You just raise your hand, high five yourself. That's it. Send yourself into the day with all of that documented benefit, like you are your own best teammate, into the game of life and business, knowing you have your own back, knowing that no matter what happens, you're going to go for it, that you're going to pick yourself up. You're going to face it. You got this. After 5 days, this is what he said to me. He said, Mel, the reason why I thought the high five was stupid is because I look in the mirror and I see somebody that failed. I see somebody that didn't provide for his family. I see somebody that's a bad husband, a bad father because of that. And you only high five somebody that you believe in and you like. And I think I'm a failure. So why on earth would I high five myself? And I think that in him seeing that, it's illustrative of what's actually holding people back. It's the fact that when you look in the mirror, you are still judging yourself for the mistakes of the past. You're withholding the very support, the very forgiveness, the compassion that you need in order to heal, in order to write a new chapter, in order to be productive, in order to change your habits. You've been outsourcing that appreciation to everybody else, that compassion to everybody else, when really you got to bring it in-house. I had no idea, Scott, that the man standing next to me at the bathroom sink every morning for the last 10 years has been beating himself up over a business that failed. And I looked at the exact same thing and thought it was an extraordinary gift. I didn't believe any of those things about Chris. I thought he was an incredible husband, an incredible father. I thought he was an amazing entrepreneur who, through failing and trying, stumbled into his true calling, which is this men's retreat soul degree. And it was really scary to learn just how dark it had gotten for him. And what I'm happy to say is that through therapy and through talking about it and through not bottling it up and through high five and through exercise and through acts of self-compassion, self-kindness, self-appreciation, the fog is lifting. I see the light coming back on. I see my happy husband coming back. And so, it has been a deeply, deeply personal and powerful and transformational experience to not only confront just how awful I've been to myself by just constantly focusing on what's wrong or constantly beating myself up, or you could have done this better, you should have said this, or if only you'd sent this text. And the relief and peace that you feel when you are able to look yourself in the mirror, and even though you may have flubbed the presentation, or you didn't meet your quota this year in the sales, or you raised your voice at your kids, or you drank a little too much, or whatever it is that normally you beat yourself up at. If you can have more compassion and kindness with yourself, research shows that of all the behavior change that you could engage in, all of it, exercise, diet, meditation, all behavior change, the number one behavior change that has the greatest impact on your fulfillment and your happiness is making it a habit to be kind to yourself. And so that's what the high five habit is all about. It begins with a high five in the mirror, but there's so much science in this, so much research in this about habits that train your mind and train your brain, train your body to take the resting default from self-criticism and stress and anxiety and negativity to a resting default of calm, centered, confident, encouraging, and compassionate. And when you can start each day feeling grounded in your body and looking yourself in the mirror and seeing a person that you're rooting for, that you like, that you support, you will take that foundational energy and strength back out into the world, and it will transform your family. It will transform your teammates. It will transform your company. You getting right with you changes everything. Here's what I want to do. I want to give you some ways to think about productivity that you might not be thinking about right now. Because the fact of the matter is, when I hear the word productivity, I don't want you to think about plowing through a to-do list. Because part of the reason why you don't feel productive is because you're busy doing the things that aren't important to you. Yeah, do you need to make sure you have milk, or you got almond milk or oat milk in the fridge? Of course you do. But have you ever noticed that all the busy crap in life tends to take care of itself? That you don't really need to focus your time and energy on the minutia that's on your to-do list, because that stuff tends to grab your attention. What you really need to do is figure out how to create time and how to create the focus that you need in order to feel like you are making progress on the important things. And that's really what productivity means to me. You get all kinds of stuff done. You're really busy in your life, aren't you? But are you getting progress made on the important things? Probably not, because that's the challenge for most of us. And so first things first, when it comes to trying to have a breakthrough in productivity, you need a game plan. You need to have a very short list every week of what actually matters to you, okay? Because I guarantee you, if you were to do an audit of the way that you spend your time this week, you would probably see that 95% of your time is spent on things that you really don't care about. And even more scary, I bet you don't even realize how much time you are wasting just mindlessly scrolling through social media or sitting on the couch with the TV on, also answering emails. That is the least productive way to spend your time. Multitasking, spending your time just sort of zoning out on things that don't matter. What I want you to do is I want you right now to think about, what is it between now and the end of this week, for example? What is it that matters to you? What's the most important thing that you would love to make progress on that you never seem to find the time, okay? It's a whole nother conversation for us to talk about whether or not you actually have time, because the fact is you do have time. You have plenty of time to make small amount of progress every single day on what matters to you. What you do not have right now is you do not have a plan for prioritizing the important stuff in your life. What's the one thing that you want to make progress on, that you want to find some time to be productive on? Because productivity, everybody, true productivity is not plowing through a to-do list on shit that doesn't matter. True productivity is making progress on something that matters to you, because that's going to make you feel like you own your life again. That's going to make you feel like you're putting yourself first. And these projects, everybody, you don't have to get them done this weekend. You just need to identify, make a plan for what's the most important thing. I want to get my sister's SSI paperwork completed for her. I would love to spend more time with my son. I would love to work on my YouTube channel. Amazing. Amazing, everybody. I would love to remember to high five myself in the morning I see somebody. I'd love to spend time on my job search. Right now, all we're doing in order to have a breakthrough in productivity, step number one, is to identify one thing that you want to make progress on by the end of the week. That's it. Could be today, could be this weekend. Just identify the one thing you want to make progress on that matters to you, that you never seem to have time on. For me, I really want to spend time with my son. And what does that mean? That means I got to be intentional about carving out time to be with him. And so we're going to go skiing together this weekend in Vermont. And I have to take the step to organize the time, because just going up and being with him for the weekend, that isn't going to lead to quality time together, right? It's going to leave me in his presence and him in my presence, but he'll probably want to spend time with his friends. He'll probably want to spend time with his girlfriend. I'll be busy doing other things. And so you really need to identify, what is it that matters to you that you want to prioritize and make progress on? That's step number one, everybody. Because if you don't actually make a game plan, it's sort of like a football team that's playing and they score in the wrong end zone. You need to know what is it that matters to you, because you can be busy as hell, you can be productive as hell on all the wrong shit, and then literally it's like scoring in the wrong end zone because you were not focused on the goal that mattered to you. Okay, great. So I see so many people writing down what they want. And I also see people going, I'm so bad at organizing my time. No, you're not. You're terrible at figuring out and identifying what matters to you. Because the fact is, everybody, based on research, if you end every week feeling like you made progress on one thing, just one thing that matters, and notice I said progress, not that you got it done, that you just spent some time and you just pushed yourself forward a little bit. If you, based on the research, end every week going, wow, I made a little bit of progress on something that mattered to me. The book I want to write, the YouTube channel I'm trying to start, the job search I'd like to do, researching trauma patterns in relationships so that I can show up better in my relationships, finding a therapist, spending time doing that. Whatever it is that is the most important project for you personally, identify it. Step number one. Number two, focus on progress. So part of the reason why you don't feel productive is because you're trying to complete everything. And so let's take one of the things that I saw somebody write, that you want to clean up one of the spare rooms in your apartment or in your house, that maybe there's a spare bedroom and you have been wanting to turn it into a home office, or maybe one of the kids has moved out of the house and you want to declutter that room, like a project around organizing. Maybe it's something in your garage or your basement. Or, hey, here's one for me. Our daughter moved out and started her life, post-college. And our other daughter is out in Los Angeles going to college. And we, no joke, have 3 garbage bags full of clothes that somebody needs to go through to figure out what needs to be donated, what could you actually sell because it still has tags on it. And it has been sitting there for 2 months. So maybe you have a pile of that kind of stuff in your house. This is not a priority for me. I'm perfectly fine with it sitting in the room where our laundry is. The priority for me this week is to carve out dedicated time to hang out with our 16-year-old son and do something fun together. Because we spend a lot of time together, but we don't get intentional about doing something specific. But if you want to declutter, for example, here's where we all go wrong. You identify what you want to do, and then you think you got to get it done. In order for me to go through 2 bags of clothing, for example, in order for you to clear out your garage, that could take you 2 days to do it the right way, right? Because, if you don't give yourself enough time, then you're going to piles, and so then you think I can't get it done, and so then you never schedule it, right? Okay. We're not going to worry about completion, everybody. We're going to worry about progress. So when you think about things in terms of progress, it can shrink the amount of time that you need. Maybe all that you're going to do is you're going to work on one dresser in the room, or you're going to work on one shelving unit in the garage. And by simply making the time to, number one, identify what matters to you, and number 2, identify what meaningful progress could look like, you will now shrink the amount of time, you will define the project, and you can make the time for it. And simply just doing that is going to make you feel more productive based on the research. All right, now let me talk about what you need to do. Okay, I literally have notes for this. Oh, there we go. And I just lost it because I really want to make sure that I teach you all this stuff. So Here, Becca, can you help me? Because this is not, because my thing is not, never mind. Guys, I am trying, multitasking is not how you be productive. And you are watching me multitask right now. We're going to get into some of the science now. So now that is how you leverage something called the progress principle. Okay, the progress principle is really important when it comes to productivity. This is a concept that I first learned about in the Harvard Business Review. So if it's in the Harvard Business Review, everybody, very fancy, must be accurate, right? If it's coming from Harvard. Well, the progress principle is a study that comes from a study where researchers looked at, I believe it was 14,000 work journals. And what they found after looking at the work journals of how people spent their time, 14,000 people, is that at the end of the week, the people that felt like they had been the most productive and the people who felt the most fulfilled by their work week were the people who simply made progress on something that mattered. And so by you identifying what matters to you this week, and by you identifying a way that you can make a small amount of progress on it, you are leveraging this research from Harvard Business Review about what creates productivity and meaning and fulfillment in your life. And that's making progress on something that matters. Now that I've introduced you to the progress principle, I want to unpack some of the science around productivity, okay? So that you can also bring what research says about what productive people do to leverage brain power to be more productive. Ready? Everybody ready? Okay, good. So here's a couple concepts that I want you to think about. First, we're going to talk about globally how I want you to think about being able to focus your attention and get things done, okay? And this is on a day-to-day basis. First of all, when I talk about productivity and the ability to focus your attention on a day-to-day basis, I want you to understand a simple fact. In order to get things done, in order to direct your focus and move through a task, you are going to require some brain power. And so I want you to think about your brain like a car engine, right? And a car engine is what you need in a car to power you forward. And your brain is like an engine that will power you forward to help you get tasks done. Now, an engine requires fuel, right? And sure enough, your brain has a certain amount of fuel. So imagine that you got like a tank that has fuel in it in your brain, okay? And as you wake up and as you go through your day and as you direct your attention on things, guess what happens to that fuel in your brain? It starts to drain. And so I want you to know this because the tactics and the tools that I'm about to teach you relate to the fuel in your brain and what times of day you have the most fuel. What times of day you are more likely to be able to focus, okay? And what do you think, everybody, is the best time of day for your brain and for the amount of fuel that you have in your brain naturally in order to be able to tap into it and drive your focus at something that's important to you? I love this. You guys are right. Laura says my brain is mush by the end of the day. Everybody's saying morning, morning, morning. I see somebody saying, I feel like I'm on empty. This is a really good analogy because there are times where you feel like your brain is full of gas and you're able to direct your attention and focus. And then there are times where you're like, Jesus, I feel like I'm running on empty. I'm running on fumes here. And you're absolutely right, everybody. It is mornings. When you wake up, generally what the research shows is that your brain is primed to be able to focus for the first 4 hours of the day. The first 4 hours of the day tend to be, for most of us, the time of day when your brain has the most fuel and when your speed of processing is awesome and when you are able to direct your attention at what you need to be focused on, okay? So now there's a caveat to this. you can manufacture boosts of productivity and boosts of feeling like you've got a little bit more brain power. Number one, immediately after you exercise. So if you have a burst of cardio, 30 minutes is what a lot of the research says. But if you have a burst of cardio, you will get a little bit of increase in fuel. Another thing that helps is getting outside. Getting outside, when you start to feel your energy and your focus start to go to empty, getting outside is another way to give yourself a boost of brain power. But generally speaking, everybody, you need to start to marry mornings with peak productivity, okay? This is true for most of us. There will be some of you that are like, I don't know what you're talking about, Mel Robbins, because I feel like my brain is full at the end of the day. If that's you, because I see some of you going, well, that's nighttime for me. You got to run with that. And you got to save the most important stuff for those moments where naturally you feel like you've got the energy and you got the fuel in the tank to be able to focus. So kind of like, you think, what do you think of when I say the word salt? You think of pepper. What do you think of when I say the word peanut butter? You probably think of jelly. When I say the word productivity and focus, for most of us, I want you to start thinking morning. And here's why that's important. The reason why that's important is because if you can own your mornings, if you can put that thing that matters to you first thing in the morning and make a little bit of progress on it, you are going to start to feel like you are more in control. You're going to start to see yourself using your best brain power and your highest level of fuel at the thing that matters most to you. So that's a little tip for you about productivity. Try to attack the thing that matters to you first thing in the morning, before you jump on your phone, before you answer emails, before you start attacking a to-do list that's full of shit you don't really care about, before you look at social media. Direct your brain when your fuel level is high and your focus is clear at the thing that matters to you. And it's not just because it makes sense that you would want to do this. I mean, the second you look at email, your stress level goes through the roof, your attention gets hijacked. But it's also because based on research, literally your margin for error increases. They did this research with anesthesiologists. And do you know that the number of errors increase as the day goes on? The number of errors that we see in hospitals increase almost 3 times from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. From 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. Hand washing decreases in hospitals, and that also relates to problems in the day. Now, look, the margin of error is very small. But what happens as you go through your day, particularly if you're not getting outside to increase the fuel in your brain and kind of reset your ability to focus, particularly if you're not introducing cardio, which also increases the fuel in the brain and helps you focus, is that your ability to maintain concentration as your fuel level decreases and your brain power decreases and the distractions increase and the number of things that you're trying to remember increase, your ability to laser focus decreases. That's why mornings matter, everybody, when it comes to focus and when it comes to human error, when it comes to distraction. This isn't just research. This is common sense. And, this is not to slight anybody that is working in a hospital, because those folks are angels, particularly after this pandemic, and the margin of error is puny. But when we look at even a puny margin of error over the course of a day, and of the decrease in brain power and the increase in information that your brain is absorbing, geez Louise, it does increase 3x. So you want to prioritize what's important to you first thing in the morning. And you know how I feel about the phone, everybody. Do not look at that damn thing until you have literally figured out what matters to you and you've made a little bit of progress. Now, to end, I want to give you 2 other really cool tips based on science that is going to help you with something that is also a problem right now when it comes to productivity. I believe that right now, the single biggest barrier to you being able to focus on what matters to you is Zoom fatigue. Seriously, you are online all day. You're probably on video conference calls all day. Give me a heart or a hand in the comments, everybody. If you're like, I can't get work done because I'm always on freaking video conference calls all day, okay? I can't get anything done. I feel like I am a Zoom zombie at this point. How many of you feel like that? Like, holy smokes, I'm a Zoom zombie at this point. The number one thing that is zapping your ability to focus and to concentrate is video conference calls and being online all day. And let me tell you why. There are two reasons why this parade of Zoom meetings that you're on all day is killing your ability to focus on what's important. Number one, when you stare at a screen, your eyeballs, like if I'm staring at a screen, my eyeballs have to focus. Like they're literally focusing on something right in front of my face. And when you have to focus on something really in front of your face, it drains your mental fuel and it makes you feel tired. And so it is critical that you step away from the computer at least every 45 minutes, everybody. So every 45 minutes, what the research suggests is you need to step away from the computer or the phone or get off that Zoom conference and step outside, number one. Even just open up a freaking window if you're in your apartment and look and like get the fresh air. And second thing you need to do is stare off into the horizon. Allow your eyeballs, like it's almost like they're twisted super tight when you have to focus something that's right here. When you step outside and you stare off at the horizon for just 5 minutes, it's like your eyeballs untwist, your brain relaxes, the fuel picks up a little bit, and that's a simple trick that's going to help you with the fatigue that being online all day is causing. The second tip that's going to help you with focus, everybody, turn off your frigging camera. Sure, start the meeting, say hi to everybody, and then it is okay to say, hey, everybody, I'm going to turn off my camera because I really feel like I concentrate better. And here's the truth. The truth is you will concentrate better because if you stare at yourself on camera all day, this part of your brain, your prefrontal cortex engages, and it's hard for you to drift into kind of autopilot. If you and I are in a meeting, you're drifting in and out of paying attention because you are able to absorb information through all 5 senses. When you're in this 2-dimensional space and you have to stare at your own face, this part of your brain engages and it drains fuel faster. That's one of the reasons why Zoom fatigue is real. Zoom fatigue is draining your focus because number one, your eyes are having to really focus. It's like they're twisting really tight because you're right close up. Number two, you're staring at yourself half the time, which makes this part of your brain, your prefrontal cortex, pay attention, and that drains your fuel faster. So the quick fix is turn off your camera. You are allowed to do that. You are adults here. Just tell people, I'm just going to turn off my camera because that way I notice I don't get a headache and I'm able to concentrate more. And every 45 minutes, step outside, take a deep breath with the fresh air, let the nature make your senses come alive, and for 5 minutes, just stare off into the horizon. And here's one other final tip. It is perfectly acceptable, particularly in this hybrid environment, for you to take your calls, especially if you're able to turn your camera off, outside while you're walking. If you're moving while you're listening to a conference call, your fuel level is going to rise, your heartbeat is going to go up, the outdoors is going to activate your senses, and it's a way for you to increase your focus and also be working. There you go. 3 simple tips to combat Zoom fatigue, to increase the fuel and your ability to focus in your brain. All of this stuff is research-backed tools that you can use immediately. In this video, I'm going to show you the specific way that you can use the 5-second rule to increase your productivity. Now first, let's talk a little bit about productivity as a concept. Productivity is not about blasting through your to-do list and doing more. It's actually about doing less. Productivity is the ability to make progress on the things that matter to you. It sounds simple, right? I mean, just move the ball down the field on the important stuff. But it's not easy. Why? Blame your feelings. You see, you're capable of being more productive. You're just waiting to feel like doing what you need to do. And guess what? You're never going to crack the whip on yourself when you have a million other things that you need to do and you got people that are making demands on you. One thing that you must understand is that you have the power to decide what's important. And productivity actually boils down to simple 5-second decisions. Here's one that you need to start making immediately that will have a tremendous impact on your ability to be productive. When the alarm goes off, do you wake up early to work on your business, or do you blow it off because you don't feel like it, you're tired? Or do you stick to the plan to finish some important tasks, or do you mainline Facebook instead because, you'd just rather relax? When you change your decisions, you'll change everything. Because productivity boils down to the ability to make small 5-second decisions that put the things that are important first. And here's one 5-second decision that will make you more productive than any other. Get up 30 minutes earlier than you normally do and push yourself to work on the most important priorities first. This isn't just me. Research shows that your most productive hours are the first 2 to 3 hours after you wake up and get ready. This means that for peak productivity, you've got to do whatever you can do to make sure the most important work to you gets done first during that window of time. So here's how you're going to use the rule. The moment your alarm goes off and you want to hit the snooze button, use the rule. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, push yourself out of bed. Then use the rule again. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Sit down and get working on the things that matter to you instead of checking your phone, instead of letting your day get hijacked. You see, the moment you feel yourself wanting to give in to distraction, you're going to use the rule again. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, do assert control and get back on task to the things that matter to you. It doesn't really matter how busy you are. We're all busy. If you really care, you'll find the time. And that's how you're going to use the rule, to find the time to work on things that matter to you. This is what Rachel did. She wanted to change her life, so she decided to make progress on what was important. And she did this by starting with getting up earlier, getting out of bed, and 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, focusing on what mattered. And as you can see, that small 5-second decision, getting up 30 minutes earlier, started a chain of events that changed her entire life. She lost 30 pounds, she bought her first home, and she reinvigorated her marriage. Why? The reason why is because she learned how to beat the feelings and excuses that stopped her, and she found the time to work on things that matter. That is the definition of productivity. Getting the important stuff done only works when you push yourself to do it. And when you push yourself, 5-second decision, to wake up earlier and start your day off right, you will be shocked by what changes it ignites. This is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to productivity. There are tons of strategies that I discuss that are based in research in Chapter 10 of the 5-Second Rule book, and how you can use all of this research in combination with the 5-second rule to not only become more productive, but to end procrastinating forever, to regain your focus whenever you get distracted, and lots of other things that are going to help you improve your quality of work and also your life. The book is available on Amazon, barnesandnoble.com, and at your local bookstore. So this is a question from Vicky. Vicky writes, I'm trying to become a fashion and beauty blogger and earn money from it full time, but I have some kind of mental block and procrastination problem when it comes to actually pushing myself to do anything related to that goal. This is something that we hear about all the time, that you have this huge goal, yet you cannot seem to push through the mental block, that you have something that you want to do full time, but you can't seem to beat procrastination. This is something that we see over and over and over again. And it's this idea that you don't ever start. You stay trapped in your head. And if you feel paralyzed, if you've been spinning the same ideas over and over and over again, then you know what I'm talking about. You see, many of you are thinking way too fucking big. You're attaching way too much pressure on the things that you're interested in. Until you start blogging about fashion, you won't even know if you like it. So thinking that you have a dream about doing it and thinking that you have this grand plan that you're going to do it full time, it is a complete and utter waste of your time to be dreaming that big. And let me tell you why. Because oftentimes, if you're the kind of person like Vicky that's getting trapped up here, the bigness of what you're thinking about is what's stopping you. What I want you to do if you're in Vicky's situation is I want you to stop dreaming and I want you to just start doing small things. I want you to go back to curiosity and less into crushing your big goals. The thing about life and business and success is that you have to be willing to start. And for people that procrastinate, starting is the hardest part. For people that worry, for people that think too big, starting is the hardest part. Folks that study procrastination talk about the fact that the only way to beat procrastination is to create what they call a starting ritual, which is a way to push yourself to get started. Because all the research shows that if we can push you to get started on something, you'll likely keep going. So, Vicky, the only way to get out of the mental trap is to stop fucking thinking and actually start doing it. And maybe thinking that this is going to be your full-time employment, that's the wrong way to go about it. I want you to literally just commit to writing some sort of blog about fashion every day for a fucking week. That's it. Don't think about full-time. Don't think about the bigness of it. Actually start doing it. You may discover you don't like it, for crying out loud, but you're never, ever, ever going to advance if you continue up here. How do you force yourself to do it? Well, you can use the 5-second rule for that. You can wake up in the morning and say, today I'm committing to making small progress on this thing I'm curious about, which is fashion blogging. You can find time when you're going to sit down, and then the second that it's time to do it, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and start writing. Here's what you can expect to experience if you're somebody like Vicky who has trouble getting out of the thinking loop. The second that it's time to actually move from thought to action, you will become a first-class asshole. You will feel resistance. You will struggle with what you're going to write. You will start to feel like it needs to be perfect. You're going to come up with excuses. You're going to talk yourself out of it. Why? Well, because you're used to thinking, and now you're asking yourself to do. Why am I explaining what you should expect? The reason why I'm explaining what you should expect is because it's normal to feel those things. It's normal to feel scared. It's normal to feel like you don't want to do it. It's normal to think about doing it perfect. Letting those things stop you is a choice. So, let me recap. If you're the kind of person like Vicky that's got all these big ass dreams, but you can't get out of your thinking loops, you can't stop procrastinating, you can't stop thinking about it, you get overwhelmed and so you do nothing, the only solution is micro action. That's it. I don't want to hear shit about your big goals. In fact, for everybody out there, I don't want to hear shit about your dreams and your goals until you're actually taking the actions every day for a couple weeks straight. You don't get to talk about your dreams until you can prove that you wake up and every single damn day you push yourself to take one small action forward. If you can do that consistently for a month, then you can start talking about your dreams. Then you can start talking about how you make money at it. Then you can start talking about how you build skill around it. But until you can actually get your ass out of bed and make the commitment to yourself to do the actions required to become a blogger, or to be a blogger, not become, to be a blogger, to be somebody that's in the restaurant business, you're just all talk. That's all I got to say on this. Hey, it's Mel. Thank you so much for checking this video out. And if you like this one, I have a feeling you're going to like this one too. I'll see you there.